Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is the first First Nations Premier of a province in Canada, Wab Kinew. Prior to becoming the Premier of Manitoba, Kinew was a rapper, broadcaster, and university administrator. He was first elected as an MLA in 2016 and elected leader of the Manitoba NDP in 2017. Kinew was sworn in as the 25th Premier of the province in October 2023. Premier Kinew, great pleasure to have you here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome to APTN. As we were just saying, I guess you were an intern here about a generation ago?
In the last millennium, maybe. I came here for a cup of coffee. I think that was about it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, great to have you back. You know, as we mentioned, there's a somewhat unlikely path, perhaps, to the Premier's office for yourself. Was a life in politics something that was always in the back of your mind?
Not really, because I grew up around politics, First Nations politics in particular. My dad was a chief and a regional chief, and my mom was political staff, or technical staff, as they say, in the First Nations political world. And so that being something my parents did was not the thing that I wanted to do when I was a kid, right? But over the years, you know, I think the lessons they taught me and the experience that I had learning from a lot of great mentors across the country, it did make the transition into this world a lot more doable.
Although you did ponder a run for national chief, though, did you not?
Yeah, that was about probably 10 years ago now. Yeah, kicked the tires on it, and you know, it's a pretty clear message when the people that you ask to be on your campaign team say no. Then maybe it's not the time to run for office.
Right.
So yeah, so I waited, and. Yeah, it was all good. Like I'd been asked by different people to enter different levels, whether First Nations, federal, politics, etc. But being a dad with young kids, I didn't want to be away from them in Ottawa or anything like that. So when the provincial opportunity came around a few years later, I realized, yeah, it's going to be long days, but at the end of the day, I'll be at home with my kids, and we'll still have the family time. So I just figured, yeah, time to put my money where my mouth is, kind of thing.
Was, you know, you've written a number of books, broadcaster, a musician, hip-hop artist. Were those your writing, music, your passions, first off?
Well, I mean, those only became my passions after the NHL dream died, right? Yeah. So like most kids, I was probably into sports and playing hockey and all that. And yeah, you get older and you know, different things appeal to you. So music and writing and creative pursuits of different kinds were really important. So I don't know, I just think for young people out there, just do whatever you're passionate about and try to do right by people along the way, and you know, ride the wave, and next thing you know, you'll find something that appeals to you.
Next thing you know, you'll be Premier of a province.
Maybe, yeah.
Like you said, you kicked the tires a couple of times. Was there a moment when you knew that, yeah, you're ready to put your name forward for politics?
I think that the death of Tina Fontaine was a big moment for me personally, because I was working at the University of Winnipeg at the time. And there was a site that we ran there called Wet'suwet'en Learning Center. Did great things for kids in the inner city, Anishinaabe language, Cree language, math camps in the summertime, bringing young people from the neighborhood into the university environment, sports and recreation opportunities. And so we felt really good about what we were doing. But very tragically, the back of our building is one of the last places Tina Fontaine was seen alive. Right. And we didn't know it at the time, but in the aftermath, we saw her on the security camera within a short while before she went missing. And as all of that came clear, and we were, I think, organizing the march and vigil that followed, you know, I just asked myself, I'm somebody who's got a ton of opportunity, you know, I'm very lucky in my life. Am I doing everything that I can to prevent something like that from happening? And the answer was no. I could probably do more. And then around the same time, you know, my dad had passed away, cancer, healthcare a big factor in his final year. And I saw like heroic efforts being made by the palliative care, the cancer care people who are taking care of him. And I thought, these people are doing awesome work. I want to make a difference. My spouse is in medicine and she's a healthcare hero. Am I giving it my all in terms of this other area that I'm super passionate about, which is healthcare? And again, the answer was no, I could be doing more. So it's kind of a few factors converging and coming together. But I think the fundamental thing is I feel very lucky in my life to have the opportunities that I do. And so I want to be able to contribute in the public sphere to try and make things better for other people in Manitoba and Canada.
Nice stuff. Despite people initially around you not wanting to help you out, right from the beginning in early 2016, I think it's safe to say you were viewed as a rising star and a future leader of the party. But before you were even elected, things were kind of off to a rocky start. I remember being in the room and remember vividly the so-called stare down with Winnipeg Free Press columnist Gord Sinclair at that press conference.
Okay.
That was a long day. The Liberal Party's Indigenous caucus was asking for you to not run in the election over past lyrics and tweets. You made apologies that day as well. Mm-hmm. Did you think that you were maybe being held to a different standard as just a candidate running in an election?
No, I never feel sorry for myself, and I don't think it's a good idea for politicians to make it about themselves. It's not about us, not about me. It's about the people. It's about the public who deserve to have good public servants working on their behalf, but the public, you the people, deserve to ask tough questions of the people running for office. And so I've had my fair share of ups and downs and moments of being held accountable over the years, but my attitude is to just show up and answer the questions and then try to talk to people about what I want to do to make things better and make things more positive in the future.
At that point or any other point, was there ever a point where you thought of just packing it in, saying, I don't need this, I've got a decent job here at the university, I don't need my life under the microscope?
My first rule of politics is you can't win if you quit. So that's always been my guiding thought.
So never once thought the same for me?
No. I mean, again, I think we all know what politics is like today with social media and the partisanship, the division that exists in society. And so that comes with the territory. I think that those of us who put our name on a ballot, we know what we're signing up for. The part that I don't like is when people draw others who are not in politics into the fray. And we saw that recently in the election here in Manitoba. And so my thing is let's focus on the issues and let's try and find ways to bring people together instead. Let's try and make it a more positive, unifying experience in the future.
Elections can be messy and divisive. Your past was brought up a lot in this previous election as well.
Yeah.
A candidate ran against you with, I would say, the sole purpose of just being an attack dog on the campaign. But the search for people's loved ones in a landfill did become the focus of ads and billboards. Yeah. Even members of that party thought that was kind of gross, or at the least a bit inappropriate. But what are your reflections, I guess, on this past election that brought you to power?
Well, I think the election was an historic moment for Manitoba for a lot of reasons. And I think people feel very positive in the aftermath of how people voted. There's a lot of pride that Manitoba is taking for electing a new government and setting a progressive agenda. And there's a lot of Canadians who look at Manitoba and are proud. And I think that's great. But the thing we got to remember is we weren't elected to make history. We were elected to fix healthcare. And so I was in the emergency room of the St. Boniface Hospital yesterday morning, and it is rough. There is no shortage of challenges that we have to get a handle on here as a government. We got to deliver on the things we were elected to do. When we look back on the campaign, when you're in the campaign, you're in the moment, you're doing your press conference, you're doing your handshaking, you're doing your community events and stuff like that. But in hindsight, once the campaign was over, I think our whole team looks back at it and we think that was a pretty rough campaign. in terms of, like, to speak frankly, like, you're bringing the families of murder victims into an attack ad or a political campaign ad. Like, that's not right. And so regardless of however you feel about the issue, I think we can all agree on that. And so for us, I think, one, we want to maintain that commitment to fixing healthcare and delivering on the other things like, affordability for people in Manitoba that we're elected to do. But also the idea that we can use politics to bring people together. We don't have to agree on everything. We can still work together on some big things like healthcare, like creating jobs for people. And so I think that, we're at around the 100-day mark in office now. 100 days in, I want to keep the focus on bringing Manitobans together to create some opportunity and to create better healthcare.
Premier, much more to talk about here. We just have to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here with Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew on Face to Face. Stick around.
Hello, I'm Rick Harp, host of APTN News Brief, a daily podcast version of the nightly broadcast of APTN National News. Available on all major podcast platforms, APTN News Brief is your quick way to hear the headlines every weekday morning. Learn more at aptnnews.ca/podcasts.
Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is the Premier of Manitoba, Wab Kinew. And Premier Kinew, we've been talking about election night prior to the break here. And during your victory speech, you again addressed some of the troubles in your past in a way that I think hit home with a lot of people from many different political spectrums as well, talking about your story of redemption. And it was a message to young people, but to young Nietzsche's in particular. And here's some of what you had to say.
And so to young people out there who want to change your life for the better, you can do it. But here's the thing. You have to want it. You have to want it. If you want to leave the party lifestyle behind, it has to be you to make the decision. If you want to join the workforce, get a new career, it has to be you to take the first step. And if you're dealing with some kind of illness and you want to find healing, it has to be you to decide to move forward. I can't do that for you. A government can't do that for you. You have to be the person to decide to take the first step.
Like I said, a clip that I think resonated with a lot of people. Was that something that you had planned, you intended to say?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, I knew there'd be some folks watching on election night if we won, and so I wanted to give a message that was beyond the typical political, we're the best, they're the worst kind of thing, right? And you could tell we were very sweaty. It was a really hot room, tons of people packed in to see the result. The tie was crooked, but we still managed to, I think, share a message, which on the day was meaningful for me. But I think the most meaningful thing is to have people after the fact talk about that. I've had many non-Indigenous people, many people who come up and say, I didn't vote for you. I'm a conservative, but your message on that night of agency and, people taking control over their own lives is what our province needs. One of the first places I went after the election was to Pimichigamak, to Cross Lake. And we met tons of great people that day, tons of kids at the schools and people at the health center. But I was really moved when a group of teachers, women who'd grown up in Pimichigamak, had the message from the speech printed, and they wanted me to sign it for their students. So to see people from the community who are trying to make a change for the kids in the community say that that's a message that's going to help them do their work, very, very meaningful for me. Yeah, and so it just kind of reassures that, you go out on a limb every time you speak in public a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. So it's reassuring to see that the message shared with the election night result is one that is helping people who are doing really important work at the community level.
Yeah, I had a lot of people, I was going to ask you the reaction, because I had a lot of people messaging me as the speech was happening as well, and I think it did hit home with a lot of people. Did you have somebody in mind that you were talking to?
Yeah, I think I was talking to a lot of young people that I know, like, you know, whether it's that speech or, you know, my first book, like I say, like, you know, I do those things for people like us, meaning like I'm right there with you, whoever it is out there that's struggling or maybe looking for a positive change. And it might be that struggle is something you brought on yourself. The struggle might be something you never asked for, like an illness, like cancer, like whatever it is. And for those of us in Manitoba and across Canada who know what it's like to struggle, which means everybody basically, it's just a message of encouragement. Just I got your back, and hopefully I can share some words to help you along the way.
You mentioned going to Pimachikamak Cree Nation, but you also shortly after went to Onugaming First Nation in Northern Ontario, your home nation, a nation that's had a lot of troubles in recent years.
Yeah.
But what do you hope, or do you have any hopes of what your election might mean to the young people there?
I hope that young people in Onugaming, SAB, as we call it sometimes back home, just feel like they can do whatever it is in their life that they want to do. You know, when I used to be there as a kid, I never thought about being the premier of Manitoba. You know, I wanted to play hockey or, you know, play sports or, you know, do these different things that, you know, you think about when you're younger. But I was given lots of opportunity along the way. I was given the chance to get a good education. I got a lot of support from family and community. And I know, like, Onugaming, as with many communities, has its challenges, but there's so many good people. We have such a strong culture and language there. We have such strong families there that I'm like totally confident that any young person from Onugaming can achieve whatever dream it is that they have. And I'm not encouraging you to do politics. You know, it's got the ups and downs that I talked about. But if you want to achieve in sports, arts, medicine, business, culture, whatever it is that you want to do, you have a family, you have a community, you have a culture that backs you up, and you should feel empowered to pursue your dreams.
Turning back to the election, I guess, like we said, like it or not, the landfill issue was certainly part of the election. More than a year after police made it known that there are likely the remains of 2, if not 3 Indigenous women in that landfill. No search has happened yet. Your government is committed to assisting with that. What does that support look like?
Well, I think the support started with just trying to have a level of respect and communication with the families. And that's some of the work that we've been doing so far since the election. Invited the families of the 2 women who are assumed to be in Prairie Green. We invited them to the legislature, just apologize for everything that they went through. We smoked a pipe together. I want to show them that, like, we're serious about having a culturally respectful conversation and dialogue with them. They had some tough questions. They had some, you know, things to get off their chest, I think I can say, because everyone would, being in their situation. And so we just started it from there. And now where we're at, we're in that machinery of government. Like, what is a budget look like? What does the process look like? How do you do the health and safety? What is the structure? You know, like all these different kind of more procedural things. And so we're still gonna keep that dialogue with the families open and the Indigenous leadership, and we're gonna get this thing done.
Manitoba has, and Winnipeg, staggering numbers when it comes to murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, Two-Spirit, gender diverse people. What is this government hoping to do to address that?
Well, we're taking the first steps of what we committed to in the election, which is let's prevent this. Let's prevent more women, girls, Two-Spirit people from becoming victims, from going missing. And so we've set up a cabinet working group, committee, where you have, and it's led by Indigenous women who are part of our cabinet. And so they're going to be able to work across the different departments and pull those things, whether it's the support for a family, whether it's a housing resource, whether it's something in the world of justice, bring those things together to try and have a good approach. We hired Cora Morgan, who is, I think, well known to a lot of folks. She was Manitoba's First Nations child and family advocate here in the province, so helped a lot of families with the CFS system, with internal family supports that were needed with lots of things. So she's joined the team. She's got a lot of credibility. And right now we're putting our budget together. for 2024, 2025. And I think when we bring that budget forward, that's where you're going to see some of those bigger steps of things that are going to make a difference to keep people safe in the community and to help the prevention side too. You know, help the kid or help the teenager or a person of whatever age to be able to find safety and support so we can avoid having these tragedies happen.
Premier, we're going to try and squeeze in some more questions here. We just got to step aside for one more quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here with Premier Wab Kinew on Face to Face. Stick around.
I'm Kathleen Martins, a reporter with APTN News. Homeless, houseless, shelterless people, they aren't hard to find in Winnipeg. They're on the sidewalks, in bus shelters, and down alleyways. They're living in tents and squatting in empty buildings. They're even sleeping in abandoned cars. But who are they? Hear their stories in my new 5-part podcast called Our Relatives. Listen on your favorite player.
Welcome back to Face to Face. We're lucky this week to be joined by the Premier of Manitoba, Wab Kinew, and Premier Kinew, talking about
yeah, that's good.
talking about putting together a budget and what that's all like. 100 days in, have you noticed that there's maybe things about being on the inside of government, the colonial systems that have been around, the bureaucracy of century, that things are maybe going to be a little different than you hoped?
I think that it's definitely a learning experience, right? Like you got to figure out how do you want to do something, how do you get it done? That's the basic question of government, I think, right? And so we want to do big things on healthcare, and we want to help people get jobs and all sorts of other important initiatives. And so I think, over the past 100 days, it's been that learning experience. And I don't know if surprise is the right word, but the thing that I wasn't expecting or thinking about is the really positive response that we've gotten from Manitobans. And just to travel the province and to see people with a smile on their face and encouraging and saying we want to see good things happen, it's really cool to see. And then it's also a reminder that we got to deliver, right? Like we got to do something good with that positive feeling that people have. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the feeling of having to deliver, some of the first actions of your government were making National Day for Truth and Reconciliation stat holiday, something the previous government refused to do, recognizing Louis Riel as the first premier, decades-long fight here. Yeah. But do you feel that there are pretty huge expectations, particularly from Indigenous peoples in this province, on what you're able to do?
Yeah, there are. And there are also high expectations from all people, including non-Indigenous people. And I would say rightfully so. Indigenous people have felt excluded or that there's been injustice and are looking for an opportunity to make things right. Non-Indigenous Manitobans, people from all walks of life, have high standards because you deserve to ask for the best from the people that you elect to high office. Like the job that I have is an absolute privilege. I'm very lucky to do the job that I do. And so the idea that people have high expectations is absolutely something that we need to deliver on because that's what the job's about.
Well, we wish you all the best trying to deliver on those expectations.
Good luck with that, you say?
Yeah. Hundreds of other questions, but we are out of time. But Premier, do appreciate you taking the time to come and sit down with us this week.
Well, thanks for having me.
That is all the time we have for the show this week. You can find any of our past episodes over on our website, aptnnews.ca. This will also be available as a podcast. You can find those wherever you download your podcasts. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us on Face to Face this week. We'll see you back here in 7 days.
Hi, I'm Annette Francis. Nation to Nation is a political show keeping an eye on Ottawa on how they're affecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples across the country. You'll meet the movers and shakers of policy in Canada and those who are trying to make a change. Listen to these discussions and more on Nation to Nation podcast. For more, visit aptnnews.ca/podcast or subscribe and listen on your favorite player.